attention, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee. Today, we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, of the Haudenosaunee and Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors of our society. First up is the adoption of the agenda, and that the content of the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee agenda and addendum for February 10, 2020 be adopted as presented. Mover and a seconder. Mayor Saunderson, Councillor Hamlin, all those in favor? And that is carried. And so this evening I will turn it over to our Deputy Clerk for the election of the Chair and Vice Chair. I just turned myself off again.
So before we begin the process of the election, I will provide a brief overview of the election process. So I will first call for nominations. A member may nominate another person or themselves, and a nomination does not require a seconder. I will continue to call nominations until no further nominations are put on the floor, and we'll confirm with each nominee if they wish their name to stand. I will then ask each nominee in order of the nomination to briefly explain why they're interested in the position, and after each nominee has spoken, I will call the vote on the nominees based on order of nomination. First member receiving majority vote will be elected. If only one person is nominated and the nominee accepts, the individual will be acclaimed in the position and no vote is required. So with that said, I will now call the question. Are there any nominations for the position of Chair for the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee? Councillor?
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor Doherty.
Okay. Are there any further nominations? Councillor Doherty? Oh, okay. Are there any further nominations for Chair? Going once, going twice, once. Nominations are closed. Councillor Doherty, do you accept this position as Chair?
I do.
Okay, so acclaimed.
Thank you.
So now I'll call the nominations for Vice Chair. Are there any nominations for Vice Chair for the Development and Operations Standing Committee? Oh, Councillor Doherty.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Hamlin.
Okay, so we have Councillor Hamlin on the floor. Are there any other nominations for Vice Chair? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Hamlin, do you accept this position for Vice Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So acclaimed. So we have Councillor Doherty as Chair, if you want to assume the chair tonight.
Thank you very much. So we'll continue on. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I'll move on to business arising from the previous minutes. Okay, moving on. We have no deputations this evening, so I will move directly on to staff reports. First staff report is PW 2020-02, the Huron and Niagara Crosswalk budget request. And I will turn that over to Director Sally.
Thank you, Chair Doherty. This staff report is seeking budget approval to install a crosswalk at Huron and Niagara Streets, and Manager of Engineering John Velick will be speaking to this report this evening.
Good evening. Go to the first slide, please. So we've received a number of requests over the years for additional crossings to Sunset Point Park. So in 2018, we initiated a needs and justification study, and we looked at the geometric, we did a geometric review and did some pedestrian counts during the summertime, actually on a July long weekend. This is a connecting link. Huron Street is a connecting link, so we do need to get approval from the Ministry of Transportation, and we did get their approval last year. So it was originally in the budget for 2020, it was pushed to 2021 during the budget deliberations. Later, staff reviewed further and found that we could fund it through the federal gas tax reserve. So this reserve currently has approximately $1.5 million in its balance. Unfortunately, it was too late to add it to the 2020 budget properly. So, so here we are today seeking approval to utilize the gas tax funds. So that's generally what it would look like. The next slide is that it gives you an idea for what it would look like. It would be a traffic signal east-west direction and north-south on Niagara would remain a stop sign. So that's about it if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. And I will turn that over to the gallery. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this staff report? Mr. Pretty, come on up.
My legs are very tired, been walking all day. Well, this is the best thing happening in 2020, obviously. Matt Pretty, east side of Collingwood. I'll write my address down privately.
Thank you.
Well, as we know, the traffic is getting more intense every day. The helicopter just pulled into the hospital just before I left the house. Bad sign. We need to slow traffic down on First. And Huron Street and 26, I would also like to request the Birch Street to be looked at with MTO potential approval for something like this, or a full light. You know, at New Year's Eve, I witnessed these cars whipping up to Blue Mountain, and they would sort of dodge to the left and to the right, and all of a sudden the lights, you know, ahead and all this stuff. And I'm just like, well, what's going on here? Like, why are we facilitating people speeding through town? You know, and we've got these camps in the summer, and people coming from Simcoe Street to the
Mr. Pretty,
museum.
just
This
interrupt
annoys
you
me.
for a sec. Are you commenting on the Huron Street?
Yes, I am. And I honestly think, you know, we want education in camps and people and seniors and you know, kids and families. And I think this is a little too late, you know, and finally it's 2020 and here it is. You know, whatever it costs, I think the gas tax move is smart, you know. I read the report last night during, you know, the Oscars, and it's obvious. You know, it's time to step up and invest in this kind of thing. So I think Mr. Valek and team, they've done the right thing. And I just want to say thank you. So we need to do this, guys, and slow First down. We need to stop them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pretty. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to comment on this report? Come on up and please state your name and address.
Hi, Larry Young, 100 Bartlett Boulevard, Collingwood.
Thank you.
I'm not here for this purpose, Madam Chair, but I did want to ask John a specific question. Will there be warning lights in advance of the crosswalk for approaching vehicles, giving them a heads up, knowing that the corner or the curve is to the right, I guess, of the diagram?
So we did look at sight lines, and it does currently meet the guidelines. So on first blush, no, but when we look into it, when we do the detailed design, we can certainly look at that more closely.
Thanks, John.
Do you want to say this?
Oh, yeah, thank you. You can just fill out the form. Thanks.
That's what you call it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll read the resolution and turn it over to the committee for comment. The council received staff report PW 2020-02 and council authorize the use of federal gas tax monies to fund the installation of the Huron and Niagara crosswalk. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Hull, Councillor Jeffrey? Okay, comments? Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to reiterate the comments of our public deputy. I do believe that a warning would be best to consider whether we meet the criteria or not. I just think, especially when it's going to be new and the speed that we know traffic is going, and we know from police services that most of the accidents, majority of the accidents are drivers not being aware of the conditions or of where they're going. So I think it's going to be really important.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments from committee? Okay, great. Sorry, Councillor Hanley.
My comment is similar, but I just wanted to say, even if it's not flashing lights, when it comes to design, my comment would be if there could be something that really makes it stand out. My concern for the new crosswalk we have on here, Ontario Street, is, and I drive up and down there quite a bit, it just doesn't, like with all the things going on in that area, all the posts and streetlights, and you just can't see it.
Yeah.
And I know why people aren't stopping, because it's not visible. So I just wanted to say if anything could be done to make it stand out. Thank you.
Mayor Saunders?
Madam Chair, just wanted to congratulate staff for figuring how to get this done this year. So congratulations for that, it's much needed. And I would hope that as part of the process of rolling it out, that there's an active public education campaign to make sure people are aware of it when it's coming up, so that it is respected and they're aware of it when it comes online.
Okay.
And as one last question, when do we think it would be coming online, roughly?
So we're gonna need to do some survey work, so that can't happen until the spring. So the design would most likely be through the spring and summer. We'd like to get it done for the beginning of summer, but that's not gonna be possible. So I would say probably late fall, early winter is when it will be complete.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would also echo the mayor's comments in terms of resourceful use of gas tax funds. And just to confirm, you will be able to add the warning signs.
So standard procedure would be to have the new starburst sign in advance. Whether there's an auxiliary signal for people going around the turn, whether that's necessary or not, I would like to review further. As for an education campaign, we can put things through the usual channels. This is a green, amber, red light, so I think adherence will be quite high, as opposed to the new one here in Ontario.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So I will call the question then to use gas tax monies to install the the crosswalk at Huron and Niagara Street. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, next item, 7.2, PW 2020-03, the annual water compliance report for 2019. And I will turn that over to Director Slama or
Thank you, Chair.
designate.
Yes. So the operating authority is required to provide some water system information to the public annually, and this must be completed by February 28th. So this evening, our compliance officer, Marie Richardson, is attending, and she will be providing a summary of the annual report as provided to committee.
Very good, thank you. Welcome.
So the report is a compilation of two reports, the annual report and the annual summer report, which are both required under Regulation 170 of the Safe Drinking Water Act. It covers the calendar year 2019, and it's of course going to be on the website by February 28th. So some highlights of the report. To start with, there was no incidents of adverse drinking water tests in 2019. In the past 5 years, we do show about one incident, but it was a high chlorine, which isn't actually reportable. So we really have had none in the past 5 years, which is good news. We received a 100% rating in our ministry inspection from November, again this year, which means that we met all the requirements of the Act and the regulations. Our water sampling results showed everything was well within the required limits, with most of the results showing none detected. The capacity of our water treatment plant is set in the municipal drinking water license, and it's based on the physical capacity of the plant to produce the water, as well as the ability to meet disinfection requirements. On our maximum day last year, which is the day we had the most flows, we were at 82% capacity. So for this reason, we're already in the process of doing an environmental assessment to look at expanding the water treatment plant to meet capacity in future years. Each year we complete a management review of our quality management system. And the QMS includes all the facets of water operations and management. A summary of some key items from the review are also included in the compliance report. And in spite of the best laid plans, emergencies do happen. So our emergency plan identifies possible emergency situations and lays out a plan for recovery and mitigation. A section of the plan is tested each year. This year we did 2 tests, both involving main breaks where we needed to supply water from an alternate source. Both of those tests were successful and the water was supplied as needed. Section 19 of the Safe Drinking Water Act, a standard of care for anyone with decision-making authority over the system, is required. And mayors and councillors, of course, are not expected to be experts in drinking water systems, but to exercise the level of care, diligence, and skill that a reasonably prudent person would be expected to exercise. And of course, we're always going to ensure the protection and safety of the users of the system. Section 11 of the Safe Drinking Water Act has more specific requirements for owners. The information that owners need to ensure that they're meeting their responsibilities under the Act can almost all be found inside the compliance report. So for example, the provided water met all the drinking water quality standards, which we could see because we had no adverses this year. We operate in accordance with the Act and the regulations, as shown by the non-compliances that we didn't have. And there's also a section for finances to show that we are investing in our systems and keeping it in a fit state of repair. The fact that we have such good results this year in our compliance report show that we have an appropriately and qualified staff. We comply with all sampling, testing, and monitoring requirements. Again, we can see that by the non-compliance and the adverses. And finally, all of the reporting requirements are right at the beginning of the report, so that you can see right away that we're meeting what we need to. And finally, our quality management system policy is one of the very first things in the report, and it's because it sets out the guiding principles that we use to operate our systems. It states that we are committed to maintaining and continually improving our quality management system, providing a safe, reliable supply of potable drinking water to our customers, meeting or exceeding all applicable legislation, regulations, and other requirements, communicating openly and effectively with employees, council, and the public, and providing our services in an environmentally friendly, responsible manner. Any questions?
I will turn it over to the gallery for questions or comments. Come on up.
Do I go up?
Yes, please.
Just a quick question. John Shadbolt, I live at Conservation Way in Silver Glen. The water, I was reading in the paper that one of the townships south of us was requesting an increase and we can't supply that. Am I correct in that statement?
Yeah,
Director Slama.
Yes, so through the chair, so the town of Collingwood does have a water supply agreement with the township of New Tecumseh. And we do supply them some water every day.
Right.
About 1/3 of our capacity at the treatment plant. So right now, as we're going through the process of working on our water treatment plant expansion, and we're seeing that our use is at 82%.
Excuse me, does that include new Tecumsehs?
Yeah, that includes what they get now, yeah. So we said yes, you know, we can't supply them any more water, so that's why they're looking and investigating their opportunities for more groundwater just in the interim until we work together towards a plant expansion.
Okay, the other question is, by the sounds of it, we're gonna have to expand our water treatment plant. Is there any kind of a timetable for that?
Director Sloma?
It's through the chair. Yes, there is. So we're currently in the first step of the process, which is we're completing an environmental class assessment. And you will see a public information center regarding the water treatment plant expansion in March. So keep an eye out. I would encourage everyone to keep an eye out for that public information center. When the study is complete, we will move forward with design and then construction of the facility. We're hoping that the expansion will be operational in 2025.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. John, would you mind leaving your name and address? Thank you. Mr. Powell?
Can you hear me okay? The concern I would have is one that, you know, I'm not trying to alarm anything, I'm just trying to make a point that we should know. The report talks about chemicals, and the chemicals that you're looking at are ones that, as I understand, are prescribed by the Ministry of Environment. Well, we're aware, and the Blue Mountain Watershed Trust is aware of things like pesticides that are being used on the land. And those pesticides, to my knowledge, are not tested by the water plant. And I would think that it would be a good idea to do, to take a scan to determine if there is any issues. It's very, very difficult to do. But things like chlorothalonil, which is one of the most used pesticides we know of, and that type of thing, have water quality, safe water quality requirements. It would be helpful if we knew that. And you should, I think that's one thing that you don't have to do it all the time, but probably every 5 years or so you should be looking into that to try to see if there are any issues, but you just don't know right now. The other issue I have is with expansion of the water plant at Sunset Point. That's a very limited site. And I've written the town on that, and if you have to, you know, expand it, you're into impacts on Sunset Point and the park and so forth. So in the expansion, you're providing water to Innisfil and that sort of thing. Not Innisfil, but Honda plant. And those issues are concerns. And as the town makes that decision to provide water outside its district, the people that are suffering from it are some of the developers who are trying to develop, and all of a sudden they're going to get hooked into maybe a premature expansion of the plant. And I think that's an issue you should be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget to leave your name and address, Mr. Powell. Director Sloma, would you comment on those two?
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Powell. So the parameters that we do test for are, as you mentioned, are ones that are required from the ministry. So those are the ones that were legislated to test for. So we could give some consideration to looking at some others. So that's the one comment on that. And regarding your comment about expansion on the site, I do appreciate what you're saying, and we do have we're confined by the available space on that site. And when we're looking to our options for expansion, we are looking at, we have considered how we can meet Collingwood's needs. to our built boundary and what that would look like. Are we able to accommodate on that space? And we have accommodated some additional, providing some additional water to New Tecumseh. But definitely we have given consideration to what you say, that we want to be mindful, we're not limiting our own needs for our resource.
Well, we have provided to you a report where we studied, I think it was 4 or 5 years, we studied the golf courses, and we did pick up pesticides in the water, okay? So, the Black Ash Creek was the one that you have 2 golf courses on it, and then on Town Line Creek, there's also a golf course, and we did pick it up. So, I mean, that's an issue. I think it can be done. You just need to say we've done it and we can't see any problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think too, we need to give some consideration to the level of treatment that we're able to provide at our facility, because it is a high level of filtration, so we'd have to consider that as well.
With pesticides, your high level of treatment won't work. You're talking parts per billion, and you've got carbon. You're going to have to put an activated carbon or something like that to take those type of things out.
Care to comment further?
No, thank you. We'll take that comment into consideration.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from the gallery? Okay, seeing none. I will read the resolution that Council receives staff report PW 2020-03 and Council approve the 2019 annual water compliance report. May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Hull? Councillor Hamlin? Thank you. Comments from committee? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Hard to approve on 100%, so congratulations to your staff. I think this is the 2nd year in a row, so that is a good sign. I did have some questions, just going back to 2 of the graphs in the report. At graph number 13, it talks about raw water taking versus capacity per permit to take water, and comes up with a percentage there. And I'm wondering if you can just contrast that with the graph 14 that talks about the treated water taking versus capacity per municipal drinking water license. What is the difference between those 2 graphs, if you could please, through you, Madam Chair?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Saunderson. So when you're looking at chart 13, at the very bottom of the chart, you see that our maximum allowable taking is 60,250 cubic meters per day. So what we're taking today is a percentage of that available taking. And when you're looking at the chart 14, that's comparing to what our approved capacity is for water production at the plant, which is 31,000.
Okay, thank you. If I could just by way of follow-up. So are we providing any raw water to any of our local businesses or industries? Is that why there's a difference in the amount of raw water we can take versus the amount of treated water we can send out?
Through the chair, so we do provide some raw water to industries, and so that does increase how much we take, and we also some water is wasted through the process. So there's also a difference in that if you're comparing the amount of water we take to the amount of water we treat in one day.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does, because it's a higher percentage in terms of chart 14 versus chart 13. And just, if I could, one comment then to Mr. Powell's comments and Mr. Shadbolt. Certainly any relationship that we enter into with New Tech, part of the reason that agreement is coming forward is because the term is ending. it was a 20-year term, and that will end at December 31st of this year. But in any and all discussions that this council is having with New Tech to renegotiate that agreement, or any supply agreements we have with other municipalities in the area, we're certainly very cognizant of making sure that we take care of our residents' needs first, tracking our growth pattern moving forward, which we know will be extensive. So we're making sure we take care of our needs. And at the same time, we are able to find funding for the expansion of the plant that will help to reduce the per capita costs in our town as well. So we're very cognizant of that balance, and as we work forward to renegotiate that contract, that will be a big part of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, any other comments? Okay, I will call the question then, all in favor. And that is carried unanimously. Next up, staff report PW 2020-05, Blue Mountain Transit Partner Agreement Extension. And I will, Mr. Wisniak, looks as though you'll be addressing us on that matter.
Was in the folder? Oh, Catherine didn't put the folders. Okay, well, I guess I would go ad hoc here. To break it down, I want to do a little bit of a background on the Blue Mountain Link. In 2013, we established the link with the town of Blue Mountains, Blue Mountain Village Association, and Blue Mountain Resorts for need to access the labor force in Collingwood and in Wasaga Beach. So both councils of the Blue Mountains and the town of Collingwood directed us to pursue talks with private partners to establish this link between two municipalities. So in March of 2014, the trial service ended with both councils approving a permanent link between municipalities. And it was a service that ran from 7 to 10 in the morning and then 3 to 7 in the evening. And then in September 2014, we entered into a 5-year agreement with the private partners and the town of Blue Mountains for agreement that outlined cost sharing, cost recovery, insurance, capital vehicle purchases, etc. that I'll look into or talk about after this. And then 2018, through the Labor Task Force, there was a request to increase the hours of the Blue Mountain Link in the midday so that we would have standardized service throughout all of our transit links, including the Wasaga Beach Link, Caltrans, and Blue Mountain Link, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. throughout the whole regional area. Get the funding presentation. So just as another little background, our 5-year ridership, so we started in 2014 with an annual ridership of 24,000, and in 2019, last year, we were 52,000. So we've doubled ridership in 5 years. It's a very much needed transit link, especially for people who are living and working, living in Collingwood and Wasaga Beach and working in Blue Mountains. And it's starting to take up some steam with the tourists and Blue Mountain Village accessing what Collingwood has to offer in our downtown. So our agreement, again, it's a 5-year term that has just ended, and what we're looking for is a 1-year extension currently. The agreement outlines the basic transit service, fares, hours of service, joint ownership of vehicle, the allocation of gas tax funding, which we accept on behalf of the town of Blue Mountains and apply to the Blue Mountain Link. There's also provision for insurance for all parties and cost recovery. So the reason why we are looking for just a 1-year extension and not doing a full 5-year extension is there's a lot of things going on with transit in the next year or two. Grey County has just approved a transit link between Durham and Owen Sound, and then from Owen Sound to the town of Blue Mountain. This is something that's likely going to start at the end of this year. So there can be a lot of changes to cross-boundary service agreements and cost sharing with our private partners. As well, our current operation contract with Landmark Bus Lines is coming to term in August of 2021. We'd like to have all of our agreements and contracts aligned. So that's another reason why we're just going for a 1-year extension. At the same time, the town of Collingwood, which was approved in our 2020 budget, was a comprehensive transit study, and that is going to look into building some efficiencies into our routes. Oh, we got it. So, I guess we can go. I'm on my last slide now, anyway. Well, you can see our ridership there. We're steadily increasing and we're still going up, so that's a really good thing for us. So I've gone through that. Again, so the 1-year extension, our transit study is going to be fairly in-depth. We're looking at doing some route efficiencies. We're looking at how we can integrate with our area municipalities. We're also going to have them, I've spoken with our neighboring municipalities. We're also going to look at how we can more efficiently manage all of our transits as one, or have an authority that can oversee it, or a board that can oversee something like that. So the consultant that we do end up getting for that will look at a lot of things associated with that. We've been seeing higher traffic volumes in Collingwood. Our buses needed some downtime, so it'd be nice to be able to have a nice functional system. And so I'm hoping in the next year or two we're going to see some big changes here. We're also going to be releasing the app this year, which is going to be a excellent thing for our riders to be able to see where the bus is in real time. It's going to allow us to put out on-demand service notifications when we're down. So a lot of these things are going to change in the next year, so the extension is 1-year extensions for that reason. We've also been asked by our private partners, Blue Mountain Village Association and not Blue Mountain Resorts anymore, but Alterra Mountain Corp, to look at some additional private partners into this agreement who can help offset some of the additional costs. That is it.
Thank you, well, you did pretty good without any slides.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. So again, I will turn it over to the gallery. Are there any questions? Mr. Pretty, you can approach the podium.
Time to get serious. Matt Pretty, east side of Collingwood. I'll privately write down my address on the sheet behind me. This bus system is amazing. I learned about the Grey County connection with Blue Mountain the other day from calling Grey County and inquiring about something that Martin and Mr. Wisniak was talking about. And this is amazing because Collingwood has been such a remote community for a long time, and with a single Greyhound bus service, municipally, connecting municipalities together is such a good thing. The buses have been great. I know there's a lot of demand with the times, with the weather. The system's working well, and I just want to say thank you for all of these updates. It'll be an exciting time to have a regional municipal transit system connected between the two counties and towns. It's not easy, and ridership's important because when people start using it, they use it more. And the Presto cards, those are fun, and it's a good price. It's actually a really good price. It's astonishing, $2 a ride, and the unlimited for $40 is a really good deal. I bought an unlimited pass in January to go to Blue. Didn't this month, but from time to time, why not? So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pretty. Don't forget to leave your name and address. Are there any other comments? Mr. Young?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair, and I couldn't resist again, another question. Just in your study, your future transit operational study, will there be a source destination type of assessment to get a better idea of where people are coming from and going to?
Yes, there will. Yes.
Oh, Larry, if you can just, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I will then read the resolution. That council receives staff report PW 2020-05 to extend the Blue Mountain Transit Partner Agreement between the Town of the Blue Mountains, Alterra Mountain Corp., Blue Mountain Village Association, and the Town of Collingwood for a period of 1 year, and that council authorize the execution of a 1-year agreement extension until the end of fiscal 2020. Mover and seconder, Mayor Saunderson, Councillor Jeffrey. Comments from the committee? Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. I really just have a comment to say. I'm so excited to receive this report and to know that Collingwood's working on a transportation plan or a transit plan with our neighboring communities. I think our future will only be better with a great transit plan for our residents to get around. If we can get off the car and into transit and active transportation, it's all to the better. I actually have one question for you, Madam Chair. One thing I hear from young people coming up from the city or having to go back and forth is, of course, the lack of transportation, public transportation alternatives. So is that anything that you look at, or is that totally outside the scope of what our town can deal with?
Mr. Wisniak?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Hanlon. I think that, are you speaking to other public transit or just Collingwood?
Well, is that a service, through you, Madam Chair, that we could offer as a town? With either alone or with our neighboring communities? Is that anything you talk about? Or could we?
I think that between our 3 neighboring municipalities, with Martin, we've had a regional transportation task force that we had going for 2 years strong, and we really championed the regional transit initiative, and with the county of Simcoe now taking over these point-to-point services, I think with our transit study, we're going to be looking more in depth with that. And I've also talked with, again, both Town of Wasaga Beach and Town of Blue Mountains, and they do have funding available that they're willing to contribute to the study to look more in depth into these additional services.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just to pick up on a couple of comments that Chris has been making, we have in Collingwood had now our local bus line for quite a while, I think 10 or 12 years, and in the last 2 to 3 years, the regional awareness I think has really blossomed with Simcoe County. It's encouraging to hear that Grey County is also looking at this, because moving forward on the sustainability front, public transportation is a critical piece of this puzzle from any number of vantage points, and so it's very encouraging to see this come forward, and I look forward to seeing the upshot of our transit operational study.
I'd like to add one more comment. We've also, there's been some Infrastructure Canada funding that's been allocated, that the town of Collingwood was eligible for $5 million, and we have a current application in for capital purchases and retrofitting of buses, so we'd be looking at 8 buses over 8 years, and 4 major overhauls to renew our fleet. So that's also going to help contribute, be forecasted in our budget for additional routes and growth through development charges. So I think we should be hearing from that in the next 3 to 4 weeks about the outcome of that application. So that's also another good news story.
Thank you.
I think it's very exciting. Deputy Mayor Hall.
Just a question of clarification. The current program that exists, Grey County is not providing any funding at this point, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Hull, Grey County does not provide any funding currently.
So I can appreciate their frustration of the town of Blue Mountains at the amount of tax dollars that they send to Owen Sound and the limited services that come back to the east. And this would be a prime example. So I can fully understand why what was Blue Mountain, now Alterra, and the Village Association, and it was the late Don Braden through the Village Association that was instrumental in getting this off the ground. I can appreciate why they would be looking for others to pick up the slack in funding. So I think it would be incumbent upon this council at some point perhaps to impress upon our neighbors to the west in Owen Sound that it's time that they contributed. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will just conclude by saying what a great good news story. It just goes to show if you build it, they will come. Okay, so I will then call the vote on this staff report. Oh, no, wait a minute, I'm way ahead of myself. No, I'm not ahead of myself. Sorry, it's been a long day. Okay, call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, moving on, item 7.4, staff report P 2020-03, extension of draft approval, Bridgewater on Georgian Bay plan of subdivision, formerly the preserve at Georgian Bay. And I'll turn that over to Director Farr.
Thank you, Chair Doherty. This is an application for a draft plan of subdivision extension for a property that is located north of Highway 26, west of Prince and George Boulevard, south of Bartlett Boulevard in the western part of Collingwood. The application in question tonight is an application for an extension of draft plan condition for an existing approved zone property that allows for 320 units. It's a medium density configuration. There's another parcel of land that, could you go to the next slide, please? There's two portions of land. You can see the large bubble in the middle and the smaller bubble just north of Highway 26. The large bubble in the middle contemplates 320 units. The smaller bubble closer to Highway 26 hasn't set out the specific number of units yet, but it ranges from about 45 to 95 units. So as I said, this zoning for this property is already approved. It's compliant with the official plan for the property. The draft plan conditions that are in front of council for consideration of extension tonight were approved and were intended to implement what you see on the screen. Staff circulated these draft plan conditions to different agencies and departments to see if there were any conditions that needed to be updated to implement this approval. Only a couple of sets of conditions were updated. The first were some conditions from Simcoe County that deal with waste management, and the town itself introduced a condition that required the applicant to go through an urban design and architectural review prior to advancing the development prior to registering the lots. So staff evaluated this draft plan extension against a number of criteria and concluded that the development proposal does continue to be aligned with the provincial, county, and town policies and objectives. The majority of the condition of draft plan approval, with the exceptions of those I listed, continue to be timely and appropriate. They were revised as I indicated. I wanted to note, and I know there's a significant community interest in a couple of parallel applications that have been submitted for this property. The applicant has submitted, and these are not what's at play tonight in front of council. These are applications for a zoning bylaw amendment to increase the density on the property, and an application to revise the draft plan conditions that have been on the table for extension tonight. Those applications are the subject of a separate planning process, and there will be further opportunities for public participation. one comment I would make that is in discussion with the applicant recently, they've agreed to a public open house to provide a refresher and an opportunity for the public to come out and monitor that second process before it comes to council. So I just wanted to explain that because the report that's in front of you tonight talks about these associated applications. As far as tonight goes, they're only relevant insofar as the draft plan conditions that are in front of council for consideration for extension, which would implement this, are the subject of a revised draft plan application that's being dealt with as part of that separate process. And I want to make that clear in case anyone was confused about that.
Thank you very much, Director Farr. I will turn it over to the audience for questions or comment. Mr. Young, you're going to be our new best friend.
It's amazing how much information you can glean from these meetings. It's really informing. Madam Chair, Larry Young, 100 Bartlett Boulevard, Collingwood. I'm a neighbor to the subject lands, and I have a couple of comments or suggestions to the Director of Planning about the conditions of draft plan approval. Firstly, Madam Chair, the area, as we all know, is adjacent to provincially significant wetlands, and those wetlands are home to a number of species, but they're also home to a large number of mosquitoes. And along the trail systems that are in our area, they're the home of the black-legged mites, which I guess you can get the Lyme disease from. But I would suggest that there should be some sort of notice or warning to prospective purchasers or residents that folks moving in here should be aware that there's mosquitoes in this area. They should be cognizant of that and make reference possibly to the website of the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit that has recommendations to the public on how to protect themselves from mosquitoes and mosquito-borne diseases. The other thing I would remind staff and council or committee as well, our neighborhood is frequented regularly by a pack of coyotes. And anyone moving into the area new to the development or with this development should be kind of cognizant that this, I don't see it as a problem, but just an awareness that the coyotes do run in this area. Secondly, and I don't know if that can be put in wording that's suitable for this exercise, and I'll direct that comment towards the Director of Planning, but there's some element of information that needs to be passed on to folks that will move into our area. Secondly, my other point to do with the draft plan conditions. In my experience, in my former life, we found it quite useful, particularly at Wasaga Beach, to incorporate as a condition draft plan approval requirement of the developer to prepare a operation and maintenance manual for infrastructure either to be assumed by the municipality or to be assumed as the responsibility of the condominium corporation. That is a policy that the town still carries on, and the Conservation Authority, out of Wasaga Valley, they require that as a precondition to the approval of the swim designs. And we just expanded on it to include storm collection systems, regular cleanup of catch basins, inspection and flushing of sanitary manholes, inspection and flushing of the water mains and hydrants and so on. And to put that in as just a heads up to the developer is also a guide to staff and to the developer on what's expected prior to assumption. And then as it's passed on, the requirements are identified to the subsequent condominium corporation. Those are two of my principal concerns or comments, Madam Chair. But one of my biggest concerns is overland drainage. And surface water from this property drains to Princeton Shores and northerly to the roadside of Bartlett Boulevard. I mentioned at a previous public meeting on request through the chair to staff to undertake a staff review of the local drainage system, which in my opinion, and as a longtime resident, I know the ditches have become overgrown and non-existent. And water coming from these development lands onto the roadsides has nowhere to go but build up and then spill over. Also, I would point out that the principal drainage course that runs along parallel to Princeton Shores from Highway 26 is overgrown and is in serious need of clean out. There's no capacity for any significant flow. Now, having said that, it may be in this year's operation budget, but it's something that needs to be identified, and I just bring it to committee's attention and to staff's attention. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. Director Farr, would you care to comment on any of those observations?
Madam Chair, Mr. Young, thank you for this information. Let's draw your attention. There's a condition in the draft plan conditions right now that indicates that there's a requirement from NVCA that a homeowner's education package be provided for residents that live in proximity to provincially significant wetlands. So we'll definitely look into that to see if some of the issues that you've raised are covered in that document. So thank you for that.
I would suggest if wording, you maybe contact Doug Herron at the Planning Department in Wasaga Beach, or Kevin Lalonde, the Director of Public Works, Wasaga Beach, and they can maybe share their experience with it and maybe any wording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Don't forget to leave your name.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mrs. Moy.
Madam Chair and council members, my name is Margaret Moy and I live downtown here on Pine Street. And my deputation tonight is focused more on questions that this issue presents to me. I have a great deal of difficulty wondering why it's taking 14 years to move forward. Like many others in the community, I've been attending the Georgian Triangle lecture series, and it's based on water issues in Ontario, and it's actually focusing on a lot of the issues right here in Collingwood. And it's being given by Dr. Romila Verma of the School of the Environment and Geography from the University of Toronto. In response to questions that individuals asked her of what we can do to improve our water quality with the climate changes, she did focus on the groundwaters and wetland areas, and specifically the wetlands that will border this development. And she has it pinpointed, and she'll be following it up again this Friday. She also referred to Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, which sets out prohibited activities that interfere with or alter water courses, wetlands, or shorelines. And when I saw this item on the agenda for tonight, I thought back to previous decisions of this council, and I believe this development, maybe not this council, they sought draft approval originally on what was called the preserve, I think 13 years ago. In January 2019, Council granted a one-year extension of draft approval with only 2 members in dissension. One supporter of the extension commented, well, this is only for a year, so that person was in support of it. And another brought to our attention that this could encourage speculation of property. The longer it went on, people could speculate and would drive the price up. So I'm wondering why it is on the table tonight to consider another extension of a year, especially since there's been an increased awareness of our climate changes and its effect on ecosystems. In December 2019, Council declared that we had a climate crisis with unanimous support, and Council didn't want this to be an empty gesture of a commitment to protecting our ecosystems. And there's a vital link of water and land. And I just think like tonight, the discussion of the Bridgewater development, there is a vital link of water and land. And I find it difficult giving another extension. And I'd like to leave you with the thought that the town and the municipality could move forward to designate the wetland property as cultural landscape, much as how Oakville has done with the Glen Abbey estate, and it's been declared and designated. So that's a thought that could move forward, which would protect it for the future as well. Anyway, that, I think my presentation tonight is more about questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Moy. Director Farr, do you have comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, a few comments. These draft plan conditions were circulated to the NVCA, the Conservation Authority that has jurisdiction over these lands, and they have not recommended the update of any conditions. It's been my experience that when the Conservation Authority has been circulated draft plan conditions for review and consideration, that if there are issues of concern to them, that they will update the conditions specifically, and those conditions can at times have a negative effect on what the developer might be proposing. That's not the case in this instance. The NVCA has reviewed this closely and hasn't updated the conditions. If council was to refuse this application, the options for the next steps would be that the applicant could appeal that refusal on the basis of questioning whether there was a rationale, sound rationale for council's decision to refuse. Alternately, the applicant could revise and file a new application. The question is, would the conditions be significantly different than they are right now to implement the existing zoning on the property? And arguably, they wouldn't be significantly different, in particular given the fact that a couple of the conditions have been updated. As it relates to the question of the quality of the development and consideration of the technical materials that accompany these application, or this application, well, there are parallel applications that are under review, as I mentioned earlier. One being a zoning bylaw amendment that considers increasing the density on the property, and a revised subdivision plan. That both of those applications are being reviewed comprehensively with updated materials and consider the full range of issues associated with development of these lands. So that's an effort to answer a couple of the comments.
Thank you, Director Farr. Any other comments from the audience? Mr. Powell?
Madam Chair, I'm representing right now the Blue Mountain Watershed Trust, so I want to make sure that's clear. And I'm the vice chair of the Watershed Action Group, so I'm familiar with this file. Our goal is to protect and enhance the Blue Mountain Watershed, and we will continue to strongly oppose this development and any others that seriously impact the natural heritage features of this area. We have previously provided and met with the town's planning department on the Bridgewater application, and I would like to restate our concerns and ask to be addressed and properly resolved. The Bridgewater development proposes increasing the number of units in the application that we were reviewing from 320 to 655 units, more than doubling of the OMB approved application dated September 14th, 2007. This intensification has not, in our opinion, been properly addressed by Bridgewater. Appreciate the impact that Bridgewater development will have on provincially significant wetland, which completely encircles the development. So you have a shot up there, you can see what it is. It's right around the development. And I'd like to go back and just, provincially significant wetlands are special wetlands identified by the province of having valuable natural heritage features that must be preserved for the sustainability of our ecosystem and the enjoyment of future generations. They are the most sensitive environmental land classifications in Collingwood's official plan and are to be protected from negative development. The International Joint Committee is completing 2 major studies focusing on the important role wetlands play in coastal resiliency and mitigating flood and water quality issues of the Great Lakes. The goal being to identify future threats to the environment before they get out of hand, like phosphorus. The intensification proposed by Bridgewater is totally unacceptable based on this IJC goal. We see issues with stormwater quantities, intensities due to the hardening of the built infrastructure, the number of roofs you have and the pavement, etc. So there's an intensification of runoff. And we want to know how Bridgewater stormwater management plan address these concerns. A lot of them are taking a look right now in other areas of our watershed of using low impact type stormwater management plans. Well, they don't work when you're frozen. And so when you have a snow melt and whatever, the runoff is significant. The present application before the town would represent 1,400 persons in this built out, and the increased noise and light impacts could negatively impact the wetland. There was a confirmed sighting of a spotted turtle, and it's an endangered species, last summer, and Bridgewater has not addressed this concern in our opinion. That particular type of amphibian was also, they also have photographs of that in past. We believe the Bridgewater application for extension should be rejected, and if they intend proceeding with the OMB application that's already approved, that the spotted turtle sighting be addressed as it was not in the original application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Director Ford, do you have any comments?
Madam Chair, I would just remind committee that the matter in front of council or the committee tonight is the extension of the draft plan condition. That the applications for the zoning bylaw amendment to increase the density that Mr. Powell referenced is a matter that's under review right now. Associated draft plan conditions would be considered as well to facilitate that proposal. Staff are reviewing these matters comprehensively. The information Mr. Powell referenced regarding the spotted turtle is in the hands of the province who evaluates those matters, and we have very recent correspondence from them acknowledging this. The applicant is also well aware of the spotted turtle issue, and that's something that will be a factor in the review of the zoning bylaw amendment that's been proposed in the associated revised draft plan conditions.
Thank you. Any other comments? The woman in the gray sweater.
Hello. Andrea Leeming, 140 Bartlett Boulevard. Currently, when we're talking about, I want to talk about the drainage system of the water. Since I've moved there 2.5 years ago, every 6 months my basement has flooded. The last flood cost me $7,000, and it was because the drains in front of my house had not been kept up and maintained by the city. The city has no recourse for me to get back that money. I tell you this because in moving forward, even if this proposal does go through, even if they say that they will protect the wetlands, what guarantee can the city and the committee give us, the residents that are currently there, the guarantee that the wetlands will remain there? When you're building something, and I'm an architect, when you do build something as this on this scale, you're going to have a lot of waste, you're going to have a lot of land that's going to be redistributed. And where is that land going to be redistributed to? I would think it's probably going into the wetlands. As people move into the area, people will automatically try and get to the water. And like water, people try the easiest route. So what's going to happen? They're going to go move into these wetlands. They're going to create paths. They're going to create bridges, and they're going to move towards the Bartlett Boulevard and Princeton Shores in order to get to the water. Right now, we have cars parked in front of our houses. We have people, because we're mostly a community of people who are weekenders, that are using our backyards. I've on numerous occasions found numerous people in my backyard using my chairs, using my dock to canoe and kayak. So I'd like to ask the committee, what in the future are you going to do to stop this? Because right now, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything about the water. You're not doing anything about the wetlands. I have listened to Director Favre, and he says that everything is going to be under review, that things are going to be taken into consideration. I also hear that, well, if something happens, you just go talk to the bylaw officers. Yeah, and from the chuckles of the public here, we understand that that doesn't work so far. So I would like to know what the reassurances will be going forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Leeming. If you would leave your name and address, and perhaps I can ask Director Slama as well as Director Farr to speak to the issue of drainage, or is this something that you will follow up on, or?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll need to follow up on the drainage and get a better understanding.
Great, thank you.
On the other matters, as relates to desire of people to access waterfront, obviously the municipality doesn't have a jurisdiction over people trespassing on private lands. It's a civil matter, or a matter for the police. As relates to the Bridgewater proposal, I can say that, and it's not the subject of the discussion tonight, the zoning bylaw amendment and the revised draft plan conditions to contemplate, as to the current draft plan conditions, actually plantings within the wetland buffer that discourage people traveling into those areas. These are thorny and prickly bushes planted in massing that discourage people from moving into those areas. And in fact, the NVCA has identified this as a strategy anywhere there is development adjacent to wetlands to prevent people from entering those areas. As relates to the applications that are currently under review, the proponents supportive of this have also spoken about trying to concentrate the activities within the residential area for future residents, discouraging them from traveling off the property generally, not necessarily with respect to Bartlett Boulevard, Princeton Shores. And they've considered including a sort of a circumnavigating trail that channels people into areas of activity, which is kind of a well-known strategy adopted by many municipalities for reducing impacts in sensitive adjacent areas. Those are the two issues or areas that I can speak to.
Thank you very much, Director Farr. Any other comments? Mr. Pretty.
I'm curious if the developer is here in the room.
I don't know that. It appears not. Oh, sorry. Mr. Travis, are you here representing the developer?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's do some solution work, guys. So neighboring that property, let's ask who owns the property to the west of that, and let's ask the planner, Councillor Doherty, if they would consider berming, making a boardwalk, preparing the neighboring site with conservation-esque design and installations, such as a boardwalk, a berm, and to start with a berm. I think the highway's done out there. Like a tunnel would probably be useful at Silver Creek. Do you know where Silver Creek is? There, like a tunnel. This is serious. Like, let's get some solutions here. The tunnel at Silver Creek would be interesting for like animals that probably go under already. So let's prep this site. Let's see how far we can go into that wetland and what we can do with it. I'd like to ask Mr. Travis if his company is willing to do that, to prep before development of these 250 homes. Let's see what he has to say. Would he consider prepping and berming between that site and the wetland? Let's talk to Mr. Travis.
So Director Farr, you had you're waving.
Yeah, I'm waving. I think that the spirit of the delegates' comments are something that both Mr. Travis and TAN staff would take away, and that goes for the comments that have been raised by all the folks that have come out tonight to speak to their concerns around this area. And there are certainly matters that it's a benefit to Mr. Travis to be in the room and hear, and staff will continue to make efforts to address those issues with them.
Oh, excuse me,
We'll do that.
through the chair to Director Farr.
Excuse me, Mr. Pretty.
Yes.
Can you let Director Farr finish, please?
Oh, sorry.
It's, as I was saying through the chair to the delegate, this is something that we would pursue in discussions on those applications.
Yeah, exactly.
So we appreciate
privately or so through the chair to Director Farr. Would Director Farr speak with developer Travis regarding a berm adjacent to this property and getting ready for the 250 homes? We know what's going to happen. Let's see if Director Farr can talk with developer Travis to set up a preparatory area instead of like Councillor Hamlin made a great joke. She says, where's the fence? Where's the fence? Why was the fence done before at Eden Glen? Well, that's right. Like, why don't we ask and see if they could do that ahead of time? Because we know what's going to happen. I'm not dumb. Like, I'm not. You know, I've seen what happens around here. Let's get ready. So, could Director Farr email him and ask him about prepping the land to conserve that area around Silver Creek, as Mr. Powell and Associates have been doing for a long time? Advocation. So, can we do that ahead of time before the bomb drops?
So I believe that what Director Farr has reiterated is that this is a forum to entertain comments, to solicit for your ideas and concerns.
Let's get a solution on the table.
The developer's representative is here also taking that all in. And certainly drainage and protection of the wetland is a deep concern for all of us.
As the Bartlett Association says, you know, it's a bit heavy. It's on the heavy side, and who knows, maybe this is a shoreline issue. Let's talk about solutions here. You know, come on guys. The Connection's not gonna write about this, you know?
Yeah.
Well, maybe he will, I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Pretty. Don't forget to leave your name and address. Any other questions? Oh, John.
Stiff sitting in that chair. John Shadwell, 49 Conservation Way, Silver Glen. I was here in March and gave a little bit of a deposition. Now, first of all, I'm a rookie as far as bylaws and this and that and what you can do with things, and I'm just a taxpayer who lives here and wants to keep this place the way it's going. One question that concerned with this thing here is, Director Farr mentioned the existing original units were 320. Then all of a sudden I hear about 45 to 95 more. Where do they come from? Is that in addition to the 325 and the ones that they wanted to put in?
Director Farr?
Through you, Madam Chair, the delegate, I'll just direct you to the map that's on
Yeah,
the
okay.
wall.
I can see the map that's
So
across the street.
the approvals that are in effect right now are for 2 bubbles of land. A large, bigger bubble you can see in the middle.
Right.
That's the location of 320 units.
Right.
And there's always been also a companion approval for lands directly north of Highway 26, that
Right at the entry
portion.
That road.
And that triangular portion close to Highway 26 is approved for a range between 45 and 95 units. So that's always been the case. It's not an addition to these things tonight. They're part of the draft plan approval that's subject.
So that whole package was originally, their original plan 13 years ago, I think you said?
Yes,
So they sat on it for 13 years when they bought it for nothing. I also understand they own the land right through to the end of the town. Is that not correct?
I don't know, perhaps Director Farr, do you have the answer to that question?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't know the full extent of their land holdings, but they do own lands to the west.
Yeah, they own it almost to the town line, which is 21, I think. So there's basically no more lakefront for the town to own or to control. These guys have got it all. That's not right. I mean, I mentioned the last time I was here, we have no parkland on the west side of the town. I mean, Sunset on the weekends, it's a zoo. I mean, I'm glad the people come. They bring money to the town. They could bring more if there were more facilities there, but there's no space, and I understand that. There's a parking problem over there as well. It's nothing on the west side, nothing at all. That's a crime. I mean, it reminds me as a kid growing up in Toronto when they built the Gardner and they just cut the whole lakefront right off from the city. And you go down there now, it's disgusting. So that's what's going to happen here. These guys are just going to go and punch it in. So this whole thing to me is whatever they paid for it then and what it's worth now is all about the bottom line. And that's not fair. That's not what we're all about. I mean, we've got a lot of land to develop. You guys got a lot of stuff on the books. And this is sad. It really is sad what's going on here. I just cannot believe it. I really can't believe it. I mean, give them their 325 or whatever it is. They've already been approved for that and walk away and leave it alone. They want more money, build bigger places, better places, and get more money for them. They're still going to get their bottom line. Do it that way. I mean, it's a great location. We all know that. I mean, I live across the street from it. That's heaven out there. It's a shame if you let this go through. A real, real shame. I'd be very, very, very discouraged. Thank you. My name's on it. Do I do it again?
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, I just, because part of those comments were directed towards me, I just have to advise the committee that the disposition or the land use of any of the lands to the west of this property is not the subject of the discussion tonight. The land, many of the lands and much of the land to the west, a significant portion is designated environmental protection. Any time someone proposes development where there's a designation for environmental protection, if they wish to change that designation, they have to go through a public process. There are significant and sensitive lands to the west of this that have been identified by the proponent of the subject application we're considering tonight. So I think it's important for the public to understand that it's not a matter of a developer owning land and immediately having a right to build. And I would draw attention to the fact that there are other instances where developers have built a portion of land, and with the remnant environmental protection lands left over, they have granted or dedicated those lands to third-party nonprofit environmental groups. This was something that council was involved in approval on and probably around the middle of last year. Council saw the allocation of some lands, or oversaw the allocation of lands that were granted by a developer to the Niagara Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy. So I just wanted people to be aware of that.
Thank you, Director Farr. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I will read the resolution that staff report P 2020-03 be received and council extend the current draft approval for the proposed Bridgewater on Georgian Bay plan of subdivision for a further 12 months to February 26, 2021. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Hull, Mayor Saunderson. Comments from the committee? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess really comments, because I think the public really have articulated the frustration well, and it's not just with the public. I think it's also with council in terms of our process and the position that we've been put in. So, I mean, I have been dealing with this since my term 2003 to 2006, and it has gone through a lot of reiterations and patience. And one question through to Director Farr, I know our one committee meeting at the library, the last term, the terms of the EP land being donated to the town was still part of their public dialogue to us at that time. So that was one encouraging piece that I recall from this whole thing. And then process-wise, I guess, you know, a year now, so a year from now, where are we going to be? Is this just a timing mechanism in terms that we're going to consider the additional MBA for the intensification? Where does that get us to? And what tools do we really have to push them along? So I guess I'd just like a little bit of understanding of that.
Director Farr?
Through you, Madam Chair. This will be the first extension granted this project under this new council. And this, if the committee was recommending council to approve it. And the committee has heard the comments from the public and taken, I'm sure those into consideration, is taken into consideration right now. Staff are working with the applicant. The applicant has shown an intention to make some progress on the file. We would hope that over the next 12 months they continue to do so. However, in 12 months, the committee and council, if they were to approve the extension tonight, I guess would have the issues that have been raised by the community to consider, as well as any recommendations from staff relative to these criteria that we set out, which are important to consider when considering whether or not to approve a matter that comes before council. And one of those factors, for sure, is the consideration as to whether there is any potential for an appeal, and whether that appeal has any potential to have any success. And those are matters that staff will provide advice to council on. I can advise you, Councillor Jeffrey, through the chair, that staff are paying close attention to this. We are in a mindset where we expect to see a resolution of outstanding matters in response to the issues that have been raised throughout the review of the file. And so we would hope to see this matter come back before council and committee in a reasonable amount of time.
Thank you, Director Farr. Any other comments from the committee? Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a difficult one, I think, for our council. This has been around for 13 years, as has been said. And I find it particularly problematic that what we have before us is a request for an extension, but we don't yet have their final applications before us for the zoning and the subdivision revisions. There is a lot in the concept plan that looks good to me. There's a lot more land that has been preserved as open space and buffer. But as I understand the request tonight, it is to basically keep the project alive for another 12 months so they can bring these other applications back to us. I am of a mind to support the request for an extension, but I would say that I would not again agree to extend this subdivision. And that if this applicant, from my perspective, intends for this council to deal with this matter, I would expect great progress on this application over the next year. I also am so aware of the environmental importance of these lands. And I would expect that over the next year we will see specific policy initiatives as to exactly how these environmental lands are going to be preserved. And in addition to the buffers, because we've heard comments here tonight about the stormwater and how will that specifically be handled. We've heard comments about planting underbrush so people won't get through the trees to the water. So anyway, there's a number of things that can be done there. I am mindful of a couple of things. One, that if our official plan review is a little further along, we might not be looking favorable at development here because, in my view, it's too far away from where we should be providing intensification. This applicant is proposing what will be, as I see it, about 1,500 people on this parcel, and there are. Let me just say, what I would like to see here, if this was to go forward, are public roads that are built to public standards. I would like to see a transit stop here in the center of the project so people can access in and out of this as our transit system gets improved. We should be able to have buses go into that property, which will require public roads. I also am mindful of the concerns about people getting out onto Princeton, and maybe a little different than some of the residents would hope, because I don't see anything wrong with people accessing our public roads like Princeton or Bartlett. I am convinced that people who would be living in this new subdivision will find their way to those roads. And I don't care how many understory bushes with thorns we plant, there will be a path because that is just human nature. You want to go to where the roads are. No one's going to walk out to 26 for a walk. Yes, I understand there's a proposal for a walk around the outskirts of this, but people will want to get close to the water. So I think that we need to consider, our staff needs to consider, how will residents get through here, and with notwithstanding the sensitivity of it, if we have to have a boardwalk built, so be it. I have a question, Madam Chair, through you to our development planning director. Is there park dedication being granted in this proposal or cash in lieu?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd have to ask my file planner to speak to that issue and call on Mark Bryan to step up.
Good evening, Chair Doherty.
Mr. Bryan?
I believe that this is being dealt with through a cash in lieu of parkland provision. There's lands in this development that are would eventually find their way to being dedicated to environmental protection. I'm just looking for the condition in the draft plan conditions that speaks to parkland. I guess rather than take up committee's time, I can report back on how parkland is being dealt with specifically. But the amenity areas that are being proposed within this development will be part of the condominium. At least that's my understanding at this point. There are no usable areas around this development that would constitute parkland.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. If you could get back to us, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. Because my comment in this regard is whether there might be a parcel of land, and I know there's some vacant land, but I don't know who owns it or the state of it at the end of Princeton. But is there a parcel of land that could be acquired by the town as parkland in this vicinity that would have a place for residents to go without taking advantage of other residents' backyard decks? If people are going to the water, they're going to the water, and I think it's incumbent upon us to take parkland dedication from this project and put it where the residents are going to be going to use it, because there's no other park, as was pointed out, in this area. Lastly, I would ask if staff could make available the various reports that the consultants for this developer has submitted. I can see there's some, but they're not yet available online. And I think not only myself, but some of our residents might like to look at their environmental reports and their planning justification reports and so on. I feel this is premature to be coming to us at this point because there's so many unanswered questions. But I am mindful of all the remarks that our planning director has made tonight, and am willing to support this for at most another 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one of the points, and we're certainly hearing a lot of concern tonight about the intensification application, which is something different and separate, and though it's not before us tonight, what is before us tonight is whether or not we're prepared to extend another 12 months for this application that's been outstanding for a considerable period of time. It initially came through an OMB hearing, so that was done back in 2007. and it's been approved a number of times for extensions since then. And as we heard from Director Farr, the NBCA has been involved in that process, and they've had input in the conditions. So I think we're extremely concerned about the intensification, and that's a separate application, as I said. What happens, what we're being asked to decide tonight is whether we're prepared to allow the existing site plan extend for another 12 months so that this project can move forward in some form. And we know that if it was not to move forward tonight, that still would not be the end of it, because the applicant would have an ability to either appeal or come back with a whole new application. I think that in the interest of a fulsome process in evaluating and reviewing this moving forward, that it makes sense to have the extension for 12 months. That's not an unlimited timeline. I think the developer knows now that it's been a long process, and I think people are expecting that this is going to move forward in one form or another. I think the messaging we're hearing tonight in terms of the intensification is that that's a separate can of fish, and we'll have to really go through that thoroughly because of the constraints with this land and the importance of the EP and the watershed. So I will be voting in favor of the extension only, and will be watching closely as the other applications find their way to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Hall.
Just a couple of remarks, because I moved the motion to move forward. I too would echo the mayor's comments that we're dealing with something very specific that was brought forward on March 25th and has come back to us, March 25th of 2019, has come back to us again for consideration. And at this point, if I'm looking at the taxpayers in general, I'm not prepared to deny, because as the mayor indicated, the applicant does have recourse, whether it be to take us through LPAT or to start the process over again, and of course that would cost money to defend. I think that the opportunity for further discussion, and I'm glad that Mr. Travis, the representative, is here tonight to hear the resident concerns. Many of these concerns were conveyed on the 25th of March and have been echoed again tonight about the density, et cetera, and we'll have that discussion at the appropriate time when the application is brought forward for consideration. To the residents' concerns about environmental protection, I do think that there have been two small wins for the community as a whole as it relates to the West End. One was the town's acquisition of the property in behind the Prairie River Academy, which is environmentally sensitive and will be protected for generations to come. And the second is the property that the director referred that is east of the subject lands, west of, I believe, Wildwood Cove, maybe, I think that's the property, where that developer donated those lands to a trust for long-term preservation. So it's nice to see those two things take shape in the last year, and I would hope that that type of stewardship and some of the words that Mr. Powell referred to this evening as it relates to the protection of the EP lands out there can be impressed upon the developer as they move through this process. And I'm fully aware of what they're intending to do, but at the same time, I'm not prepared to spend taxpayers' money defending something what we're dealing with a very specific request at this time. And so therefore, I'm prepared to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hall. I think this is illustrative of what happens when a plan of subdivision wears on and on and on, and it becomes irrelevant, and it becomes against newer learning and wisdom relative, in this case, to the function of wetlands and the continuing climate change, increased storms that we are experiencing, and in a perfect world, perhaps we might have looked at this a different way. That said, I unfortunately will concur with the comments from this committee that this is an application for an extension of the existing plan, is not in any way entertaining any aspect of any revisions to that plan, and so I will support it. So I'll call a vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Item 7.5, staff report P 2020-04, part lot control exemption for 804 Hurontario Street, part lot 6, 7, and 8, block F, registered plan 334, town file D1206719. And I again will turn to Director Farr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a largely administrative division of a semi-detached building that's under construction. The instrument that's used to divide buildings with the shared common wall is part lot control, and part lot control exemption bylaw is required to advance this by council. The building that's under construction is consistent with the zoning, and this will facilitate the transfer of ownership to future property owners.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, I will read the motion that staff report P 2020-04 be received and council enact and pass a part lot control exemption bylaw to allow for the creation of 2 lots for semi-detached dwellings at 804 Hurontario Street. Mover and seconder. Mayor Saunderson, Councillor Jeffrey. Any comment? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Item 7.6, P 2020-05, authorization bylaw to execute an amending site plan control agreement. Did I miss one? No. Amending site plan control agreement, 2 Mountain Road, Sleep Country at the Blue Mountain Center Plaza, town file D111219. Director Farr?
Madam Chair, thank you. This is a proposal for a 5,000 square foot commercial retail pad that's located in the plaza that's near the First Street and Balsam Street intersection, known I guess widely for the Galaxy Cinema theaters that are located there. This is a proposal for a Sleep Country Canada shop. There were 2 key issues that staff reviewed and evaluated in this application. First was parking and traffic. The second one was urban design. If you could go to the next slide, please, Kristen. So this is a plaza that sees ups and downs in its parking profile, primarily because of the theater. And the proposal in question here was going to consume some of the parking spots on the property. Staff requested a parking study from the applicant and then had that parking study peer reviewed. There's quite a complex history of minor variances associated with parking on this property, and staff wanted to be certain that withdrawing the parking that would be lost with this proposal wouldn't negatively impact the plaza. So our peer reviewer accepted the terms and findings of the parking study, and generally speaking, it was discovered that people were, as people are inclined to do so, were parking mostly in front of and near the theater. There's abundant parking across the rest of the site, and that abundant parking provides a sufficient parking profile to support the businesses that are on the property, including the Sleep Country Canada. However, if there are changes to the user profile through changes in tendencies on this property, the parking will have to be examined again. The second issue on this file was urban design, and if you could go to the next slide. I'd just like to indicate that staff worked very successfully with the applicant in reviewing and making changes to the original design. This is the original Sleep Country Canada as I am sure a proud corporate kind of concept and logo that Sleep Country advances in many developments across Ontario and I'd say Canada. Working with the applicant, we were able to make some significant changes to the project, and I think the applicant and staff are proud to put in front of you today images of the revised concept that's been developed. It's a concept that we said is a challenge out to the applicant, that there's a real opportunity here to design something that's attentive to the Collingwood context. The building itself is located close to the street edge. And frankly, we advised the applicant that council had higher expectations when it came to buildings like this that are located in proximity to the street. If you could go to the next slide, please. Some of the key changes that we made just to call them out are introduction of decorative stone, colored brick, wood grain kind of simulated siding, glass, not just on one facade, but on a number of facades. What you're seeing here is the west elevation. So this is the main entrance for customers into Sleep Country. If you go to the next slide. The First Street elevation also includes the same features. Although there's not a main entrance, there's clear glazing, similar brick, and siding. This is something that's carried around the site in its totality. So staff are pleased to submit this site plan agreement for your consideration tonight, and just as a note to the applicant, I just want to again thank them for their assistance and cooperation in working with town staff and putting this in front of you.
Thank you, Director Farr. So I'll turn that over to the audience. Are there any comments, questions? Seeing none, I will read the motion. That staff report P 2020-05 be received and council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute an amending site plan control agreement for the development of one additional commercial retail pad at 2 Mountain Road. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Hamlin, Councillor Jeffrey. Comments from the committee. Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you. Through you to the director. Director Farr, and I apologize I didn't have an opportunity to reach out to you in advance, but I had sort of two questions as it related to the parking, both in terms of the number of spaces. One, I'm comfortable with the number of spaces, I guess I should preface, and I'm a firm believer that we, especially in large commercial cores, tend to build for Christmas and not for the reality of the rest of the year. And I think that given the compatible uses that are there currently in terms of the theater and operations that differ from, say, maybe the 9 to 5 or the other uses within that site, I think that parking is sufficient. But the one thing that never seems to be addressed and or is, and I'm just not aware of, is that we're taking out spaces, but snow removal. And that is everywhere, the snow removal seems to take up, 10 different spaces simply because the operator is just pushing it from one place to another. How is that addressed in the context that the study that was done, the dates were all in the summer, so therefore it doesn't take any usage into account as it relates to winter. And that's sort of a blanket question as it would relate to any type of parking situation. So that would be number one.
Through you, Madam
Director
Chair,
Farr.
Deputy Mayor Hall. Snow storage is when it's not referenced on the site plan, it's the obligation of the owner to remove that snow to facilitate the business that's occurring on the property. Where staff are able to designate snow storage areas that are situated on the periphery, maybe in landscaped areas, or ultimately provide notations that snow storage is to be removed in the event that there are complaints that come from that. As a commercial property owner, the business that runs the property and maintains that property has to answer to its tenants. They lease those lands to their tenants. And if there's insufficient parking for the tenants, then my expectation is if it's not mandated by the municipality, then those tenants would have concerns and relay them to the the property manager who would then be required to truck that snow off-site and make space as per any agreement they have with their tenants.
The second question related to parking, and I apologize, I didn't get this one to you in advance. You referenced change in use, so we approve this particular building is erected and they open for business, and then one of the other satellite, whether it's the pizza establishment, anyway, there were 4 or 5 buildings on site, has a significant change in use. How do you change parking after the fact based on a change in use?
Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor Hall, when a change of use is proposed, typically requires a building permit application. Those building permit applications are forwarded to the Planning Division for zoning compliance review to confirm whether there's sufficient parking. In this case, it's quite a complex series of parking calculations to arrive at what's exactly provided for on the site. And specific consideration is given to the ebb and flow of the user profiles of the different shops and services on the property. Staff have advised the applicant in this case, because of the complexity of the parking and because of the conclusions of the parking study, which only addressed the withdrawal of the spots that are now would be consumed by the Sleep Country Canada, that if there are any changes in the future, that the applicant owner has to again revisit those changes through a parking study to confirm to the town's satisfaction that there are sufficient spaces. They may find themselves in a deficient position unless they can prove otherwise, and staff would continue to use the peer review services to confirm whether or not parking is sufficient. It's our practice that we don't want to see off-site impacts on adjacent properties where this property manager relies on another site that has sufficient parking or an overabundance of parking to satisfy their needs. That's not really how you determine the suitability of parking. So I can just advise that staff will be diligent in reviewing any proposals for future land use changes.
Thank you, Director Party. Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you. Through you, just a final comment, and that is that I'm very pleased to see the landscaping as it relates to this particular building. It's sort of a backhanded comment because there is no landscaping with the addition or adjacent buildings. So it's a nice addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hamlin.
I just wanted to extend thanks to staff and the applicant for going the extra mile and giving wonderful attention to the design of this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. I myself will echo Councillor Hamlin's comments. If I could even say that I think that perhaps this particular design between the actual architectural design and the landscaping really has raised the bar for retail. The reduction in parking really speaks to a changing dynamic for retail in general, that retail stores do not experience the same amount of vehicular traffic that they once did. Just one other comment. Other jurisdictions, planners, and some BIAs, at least that I'm aware of in Ontario, sometimes will add more and more highly visible bicycle parking to send the message that there is another way to access this retail operation, and that is via bicycle as opposed to a car. And although the argument might be that with retail you need to have a car so you can pick up whatever you have, in this case I don't think people carry mattresses in their cars anyway, so it's a moot point. Anyway, if there's nothing further, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And item 7.7, P 2020-06, Part Law Control Exemption Bylaw, Block 9, Riverside Townhouses, Town File D 1206, 619. This was added by addendum. Director Carr?
Through you, Madam Chair, staff advanced this application for a part lot control. It's for a block of townhouses in the Riverside Townhouse development. It's located near the intersection of Peel Street and Collins Street. Sometimes the development unfolds more quickly than is expected. I guess this developer is moving forward with the townhouses. The next committee council cycle doesn't advance until late March, and it's expected that they'll make significant headway. They are wanting to pursue the division of the lots through part lot control at this time, and staff were, with the committee's assistance, able to bring this forward, and so it's for consideration tonight.
Thank you, Director Farr. Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, I will read the motion that staff report P 2020-06 be received and that council enact and pass a part lot control exemption bylaw to allow for the creation of 6 lots for townhouse dwelling units at Block 9, Plan 51M-1124, Riverside Townhouses. May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Hull? Mayor Saunderson? Comments, committee? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Reports and minutes of other committees and boards, we have none. We have item 9, consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, that is the County of Simcoe re-OPA decision for 360 Raglan Street. Thank you, Director Farr. If you could just highlight that communication, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is when town council passes an official plan amendment, it gets forward to the county and the county provides final approval. This is the official plan amendment that facilitated the addition of a unit at 360 Raglan to accommodate the popular cheer corps cheerleading program. And so this is just notifying you that the OPA has been approved. When council passed approval for the official plan amendment, council also approved the site plan for this property. And what that means is that this notification unlocks the issuance of the building permit so that that project can advance.
Thank you, Director Farr. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Councillor Jeffrey, second Deputy Mayor Hull. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? That is passed unanimously. Departmental updates. Are there any? Seeing none. Public delegations with a maximum of 5 minutes per delegation. Is there anyone from the public? Yes, okay. Yes, Wendy.
Hi, I'm Wendy McKenzie. I live at 192nd Street. You just take one and pass them along. And you have them up. So this is in regards to 189 2nd Street. This project is still working with an 1889 partial survey. You need a current survey to build a fence in this town. Why does this decision document not match the notification document? There was an administrative error in the document that we received. The owner chose to set the building back further than the corrected setback, for which approval was granted. Again, how does this happen without letting us, the concerned and affected citizens in the 60-meter boundary, happen? This file even has a case number, 2019-1868, and that's through Fiona Scott, who is here. She lives at 182nd Street, and she asked the mayor by email that they wanted to know of any changes to the original site plan. She approved of the original site plan, but she didn't approve of like this monster thing. Again, this did not happen. What is the definition of a minor variance in the town of Collingwood? Minor variance is a small variation from the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Adam Farr says there is no definition of a minor variance in the official plan or zoning bylaw. There is, just look it up. Minor variance fee D-131, which is the $1,560. Incidental minor review minor variance application fee, $560. Oh, we got the $560. No one sitting on the effective residences would agree with this as being a minimal minor variance. This project is just massive infilling and does not fit into our neighborhood. One of the questions on the planning report is number 3. Is appropriate and desirable? Absolutely not. The next question is said as, is minor in nature? Again, absolutely not. Flooding and site drainage. You have suggested that the affected residences, if there might be a flooding problem, just call bylaw. Well, we know that's not. Who is going to be here? Who is going to reimburse us for having to put flood insurance premiums damage that may occur from the problems created by this massive infilling structure? The new 2-story entry is not counted as part of the new building. Why? It has 2 roofs on it. Maybe I can answer that question because the GFA will exceed the 40% that the town grants. Rip it down. While you're ripping things down, you can remove 8 5/8 inches off the east side of the wall of the garage because the town only allows the distance to be 1 meter, but also refers to 1 meter in this diagram, and the second diagram is 4 feet. Anybody want to disagree with me? Because I brought the tape measure. There are 22 centimeters unaccounted for here. Make them go away. This is an 18.1125 square meters to the entranceway. This also approximately 184.72 square feet extra could be added to the building footprint on the ground. Also, 2 parts of the front yard are to be sodded. What's going to happen in the backyard? Sodding is not marked on diagram 2. Why were we not notified with this second site plan so that we really would have known what was going on, as the notification that we received was January 11th, 2018, minor variance D 132318 with the little diagram on it, page 1. We would never have agreed to this monster infilling house garage being built in our neighborhood. 3 of us have had to put up with ancillary housing being built behind us. One behind myself and Fiona Scott being 121 Birch Street. The other property ancillary housing being built behind, or it's already built behind Maria on 60 Beach Street. This was enough crap to already have to put up with, and now you're dishing this huge infilling monster. This part of her collection of 6 properties built by the same person, being Christina Banfield. You have allowed this person to ruin our neighborhoods once by allowing these ancillary houses being built. Every one of the additions of her houses is bigger than the main house. Her other properties are as follows. First property, 16 Market Street. Second property, 121 Birch Street. Third property, 60 Beach Street. Fourth property, 223 6th Street. Fifth property, 176 6th Street. Sixth property, 234 Campbell Street. And this is the one that sits in Mark Shibaniti's backyard. Another problem with 189 2nd Street build is that the town's sidewalk plow gentleman could not even get through on the 6th of February because the construction fence is sitting on the sidewalk. Again, this builder does what he wants and doesn't have to comply with the rules. He's run generators on Sundays. I'm not going to get caught. I don't care. I've never seen a project take this long to build in my life. And I'm in the construction industry, so I kind of have an idea of kind of how it should go. And you've got this guy doing the region. Well, Monica will be built in 2 years. I'll bet you he takes 6 years to build the region. In conclusion, how are you going to fix this huge mistake? Oh, and when there are so many mistakes on this site plan, how do you expect us to believe anything? 1 meter does not equal 4 feet. First floor height, 1 foot 10 inches. And they go on. GFA, gross floor area. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Mackenzie. I'm not sure that we can respond to all of these concerns this evening, or Director Farr, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Through you, Madam Chair, every time an issue's been brought up here, I've conveyed I tried to
Yes,
capture
and
the
thank
question.
you for giving me the second site plan.
Tried to capture the question and provide the response. And I've reviewed the file. Staff have accurately captured, in my mind, all the processing details associated with this. In some cases, what I'm hearing may be a misunderstanding of certain pieces of communication. I've referred to Ms. McKenzie, and as was the case the first time we met, and the first time Ms. McKenzie provided the delegation, I just invite Ms. McKenzie and her concerned neighbors to reach out to me to allow me to offer whatever clarifications I can to address those concerns. Because I believe those clarifications do address many of the concerns, with the exception of the fact that building permits have been issued legally, and there's concerns about the look and the scale of the building, and the bylaw does permit the scale as you see it today.
I'll have one last comment. I've lived in this property and paid taxes in this town for 42 years. And I never thought I would see the likes of this being built across the road from me. It's disgusting.
Mrs. McKenzie, the
Oh, yeah,
one.
write my name down.
Yeah, please do, yeah. The one item I can offer is that this council collectively have expressed concern about infill development around and throughout our municipality. And we have asked the planning department to take a look at some other treatments of infill and new policies for infill development.
Hi,
And your name?
Fiona Scott, 180 Second Street.
Okay.
I don't know if this will go low enough. Anyway, I don't have a spiel to write, but I live on the street. I've been away quite a bit in the last couple of years, and I got the original plan that you guys are looking at that I mean my grade 8 child could have done, and that's all we were ever given. And I wrote a letter back to the town that it said, if you have any disagreement with this plan, let us know, and if you want to be part of future plans, please let us know. So I replied to that, and I've never ever heard anything again. So that really is my bone of contention with this, is that I came home and that drawing was not what has appeared across from us. And we were never officially, unless you went to town, but you're not supposed to have to do that if you live within that radius. So I did not do that. I've had personal family things which have kept me away, but I have to say I'm really disappointed. I'm disappointed. I mean, it's too bad that the group that is environmentally concerned is not here tonight, because if that's the way we're going to infill our neighborhood, it's sad, because there's, we're going to have water problems. So there's a lot more to it than just, it's transparency. There's a lot of things, and I'm really disappointed in the town and the conversation that I should have been as a neighbor, as a person who lives across the street, that I was apprised to. And I tried not to make trouble, but it is, I think it's something that, like, everybody on council should be thinking about, because, for so many reasons, we're moving on. We have climate change, we have troubles, this community's changing, there's people moving in. I haven't lived here for 40 years, so I'm not coming with an attitude of you're changing my community. I bought the house 9 years ago. I am a newcomer. I paid taxes in the community for 30 years because I had a vacation home here. So I guess my point is, like, I'm just disappointed. I find that integrity is lacking, and I just hope that anything like this can, you know, and all the things that I saw here tonight, it's all connected, right? It is. So thank you, and I hope that the next time somebody sends me the plan that I'm supposed to get, when I write a letter and say, if anything changes, could you please contact me, because that's how I left it. And I was never contacted with any changes. All I had is that first little drawing, which I thought was almost humorous, to be honest. And it definitely changed, most obviousjly, right?
Yeah.
And we were not connected. So that's what I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and I'll just reiterate that because of the amount of intensification that we're starting to see in this community, Council does recognize that there's an increasing amount of infill development and that we may need to look at more robust rules going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please come and speak to the committee.
Good evening. My name is Maria Gasobra. The owner of the house 173 175. Okay, my concern is I'm surprised the construction justo in 170. This is related from one the tenants. I have it in 175 Second Street. It's my tenant's Leah. She no attended today because I have a worker or whatever it is. Anyway, my name, she said, is Elizabeth. I lived in there for 12 years. And my concern today is the very shocked with the construction just in my building. I lived in there for so many years and enjoy the place, and now everything no privacy anymore. Sorry. I left myself for 20 years in their house before went by to 175 Second Street. After 15 years, I buy to my husband me buy to 173 next door. I sacrificed all my life for their houses, and now these people, rich people, coming and take all my privacy, all my design, the house 1905. I really emotional for this decision because this beautiful town should be not accepted this kind of buildings. For example, there one. Thank you. This when proposed the construction in next door my house, era a beautiful design. After that, it's a big change and build it up with this and cover the floor in my house. This is my house. 3 levels, and now no have a view for nothing else, just across my neighbors. their houses is so much expensive today, and now lost it too. I called to the real estate and say, your house is so much values, but now lost the values. Because these people build it up with this and take an old bill that they have for 1905. And this is my concern. Should be no proof this. Because this garage is no nice in a small place in Second Street beside Century Homes, for my understanding. Everybody have access to build the garage, but not this. This is just the intention to kill it to the property of the other people. It is not right. Because before these guys, I come in myself. There should be no permission for this. It's not my concern. My tenants, I have 3, all is a set. But I'll continue living there because it's beautiful units. And today I presenting here to this kind of problems is across my neighbors, everybody to complain for this construction, not only my neighbors, all over. Because this is, for me, it's a look at the city. Look at my house, it's covered, 3 colors in my house. It's the size. And this should be not fair. When I spend my money here, I buy it because it is just so perfected. My husband, he buy this because it is so beautiful in there. And now it's terrible. I think it's all the house. Because I know one of my houses stay like this, with this. I don't understand the second level and garage with 2 windows in the front. A huge garage. I live in Collingwood for so many years and never have something like that. Now this guy have intention to destroy my property. It is not fair. So I asking here tonight, she have a possibility, no say put it down, but I say put a little bit down on top. Because this is cover all privacy of my tenants, the view, and the house. So with my respects, I ask you, she have a possibly change something in this construction. I don't say put it down, because everybody have access to have a home and garage. Me don't have a garage. I know one, but I have a very beautiful parking lot in 173 Second Street. And all together in my house is a gorgeous house, but now it's not the same. My house offering 1,500,000 the real estate for the house for tomorrow. Put it in. I say no at the moment, but I know affect this. My opinion of the people, opinion of the neighbors, opinion of the.
I'll pass it around for.
What?
I just passed your picture. Maria, you've got 30 seconds.
Yeah,
because you're almost, just a little bit. Yeah, I'm sorry, you've got 30 seconds, sorry.
This is the view, the second floor for my tenants, apartment number 2. This is the view, the apartment number 1 in the house. send the video for Roma.
Thank you.
All windows, it's like this. Now I requesting here, he no finish the construction in the side of my fence, the east with my house. Now he no finish the construction. I hope he no trespassing my house. For that. I requesting here, see he need permission or see you give you the permission, because my opinion, I will give you permission for this.
Thank you.
Disciplinary, negative to permission, and this is my house.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
We,
Thank you.
yeah. We certainly have been well schooled on 189 Second Street. Are there any other delegations? Thank you.
Again, busy night for me. Andrea Leeming, I'm now talking to you as Vice Chair Heritage Committee. Just wondering what happened to the heritage minutes. I came here to specifically talk to them. Yeah, just wondering where they are.
The Deputy Clerk can speak to that.
Through the chair to Andrea. So the minutes haven't been approved by the committee yet, so they'll be on your agenda this week for approval, and then they can come to the committee.
Were they supposed to be on the approval before this meeting?
They haven't been circulated for approval by the committee yet.
Why?
Due to staff resources.
Okay, maybe we can get into that depth later. Second question is, that's a weird answer. It's come to my attention that the Heritage Committee, first of all, you all know that we're volunteer, right? That we do this part-time, we don't get paid. The last meeting that I attended was flat on my back in the hospital, where I couldn't do much work, but I was part of the meeting. I listened to it as far as I could. But what was very concerning to me was the fact that the BIA member chaired it, who has opposing views to heritage. Second concern is that numerous times the Heritage Committee has told developers, planners, people that they are not allowed to do things. Paint on walls, paint on heritage brick, put vinyl windows in. Numerous times, the department planning has overridden us, said that there was minor variances. The last time that it occurred, they said that they could paint on heritage brick, citing that they used the right type of paint. I have my master's in historical preservation, just so you know where I'm coming from. I don't think, though I could be wrong, that there are experts within the Department of Planning that are allowed to say that people can paint brick. If I'm wrong, you can please tell me, but I don't think that there's many people here with the level of expertise that I have. So my concern is, why are we having a heritage committee here? Is it just for looks, or are we actually going to enforce some of the things that we take the time, effort to go and look at these things, to plan about them, to say, no, you cannot do this, no, you cannot put a steel door in the front door, and then I drive by 2 months later and it's there. You know, there's a steel door there. I mean, to the lady that just presented to you, that's outside of our jurisdiction, unfortunately. But if we go this route, You're not gonna have a Collingwood, a heritage Collingwood. It's part of our tourism, it's part of our economy. This is what Collingwood is all about. I've been here since 1970, and the houses that are being put up right now are not to the scale and massing. I'm not talking about if they look modern or not. Of course, the modernization of the buildings that we have now are the history that and the footprint that we're going to leave for future generations. But when we mark the streetscape and the way that things feel in this town, you're going to lose your tourism. You're going to lose our cultural identity and our heritage identity. Now, I think that I know that the chair is going to be stepping down. I am vice chair. But why should I move forward with this, even though I have a very extreme passion for heritage and architecture and for this town, when our own town is undermining our committee? And what recourse do we have? Do we just sit there and say, oh, well, you said it was a minor variance, you can just go ahead and do that. You could go ahead and paint on the brick, go ahead and put the vinyl windows in. Like, never mind that the brick was made in 1880, it's soft brick. Do people understand why we say that? We don't say it just because we don't want modernism to come to the heritage buildings. We say that because a vinyl window with brick that was made in the 1880s is a soft brick. Wood windows expand and contract. Heritage brick expands and contract. When you put forcible things in like steel doors and vinyl windows, you push against that brick, the brick crumbles, and then what are we having here? We have no heritage. We have a Disneyland effect if you're going to be putting new brick and new mortar into that. Now, this is not something new. We're only 150 years old. I'm originally from England, where the heritage there is thousands of years old. And I can tell you right now, if this continues, this is very, very poor remarking on this town. So I'd like to know what our situation is going forward. And if this council and the departments are going to bring us up rather than undermine everything that we do.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. To my knowledge, no one from the Heritage Committee has officially addressed Standing Committee or Council with concerns, but now that we have been addressed, these concerns will be followed up on.
Thank you. I think it's just in the past that when you bring a committee full of volunteers, you have various backgrounds and expertise. And I think now we are certainly, with the people that we have on our committee, and myself included, we do have the expertise to talk to these matters. And I don't think we're going to allow, and I don't know how to go about that, we're not going to allow city department officials to override us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah.
Is there...
Further to this lady's comments about the heritage, one thing we didn't mention is that all three of us live in a heritage house. Maria lives in the original one built by the Petermans in 1905. Mine is 1906, and Fiona's was the rental unit that was originally built for my house, which was the sister of Petermans that built 174, 173, 175? 173, 175 2nd Street. So every one of us is in a heritage house, and we keep the heritage houses up. And we don't want to see this thing in front of us. We don't need to be the guinea pig. We've been the guinea pig before for the ancillary housing behind us, and we have flooding because of that. We're really angry.
If there's any concerns relative to property standards, those can be followed up on with bylaw. Thank you for your comments. Any further delegations? Okay, any other business from the committee?
Madam Chair, can I ask staff some questions arising out of the deputations?
Certainly.
So with respect to the property on 2nd Street, I'm sure we've all driven by it, and it is a bit of a shocker to see the wall of building there. But I have a question about drainage, because I remember, and I guess through you, Madam Chair, perhaps Director Farr can answer this, I'm not sure, but I recall our buildings manager coming and telling us he had changed, I'm going to say the bylaw, so that infill would have to, infill development would have to supply drainage plans to make sure it wasn't impacting adjacent properties. And I'm wondering if that change came in time so that a drainage plan was filed for this infill development.
Director Farr?
The answer is no. The bylaw passed, I understand, sometime early last year, and that was after this building permit was reviewed, which didn't require the drainage for additions.
And my second question is, I can see the problem is that what goes to the Committee of Adjustment is what, is required by the committee, which is just sketch out what your changes are going to be. And then, in fact, once the site plan's done, you see all of what is proposed, including the things for which variances are not required, which is the really big surprise I think that the community was faced with. And what I would like to know is during, as we move to look at the infill situation in our town and the rules that we need to change, if, Madam Chair, through you to Director Farr, we could take into consideration whether there should be a requirement for a site plan when infill development is going through, and if that could be part of the report back.
Director Farr?
This is a matter that can be looked into in the event that staff comes forward with this report. Requiring a site plan for infill development is a significant undertaking from a resource standpoint for a municipality to embark on. And there are differing opinions on whether it is the appropriate approach to do so. I can advise that with current development application activity and policy issues within the town of Collingwood relative to current staff resources, not just in planning but in other commenting departments, including infill development as part of a site plan review process would create significantly more resource requirements or create strain on existing functions. But some municipalities have undertaken this in the past, others have not, varying degrees of success or complication either way.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Director Farr. I'll just finish by saying that I think that we are, with the amount of infill development and rebuilding that's going on, we really owe it to our community to, invest whatever resources we can. And I know we'll be having more fulsome discussion on this, but I'd hate to see us change the character of our community one house at a time with no one paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. Deputy Mayor Hall.
Just to follow up on Councillor Hamlin's point, I think that we agree in terms of the issue of infill, and we agree from a massing standpoint, I believe. We may share a difference in terms from an architectural standpoint because I quite like some of the new builds that are actually going in. There have been homes that have been built, say, within the last 5 years or newer that are actually larger than this particular home on 2nd Street. But they were built in a style that's more reminiscent of early 1900s and therefore maybe fit in with the neighborhood a little bit better. So therefore they didn't draw maybe the same attention. The issue that is, I don't necessarily have an issue if I'm looking at from Miss Mackenzie's property across, if I'm looking at the home, at the property from, say, the building on the west side. It is this issue of the garage though, and this massing, and we've seen a repeat of this. And it just seems, and obviously I'm ignorant to this, but it just seems like we're missing something so simple in terms of just setbacks and the height. And if we could simply just concentrate on that particular aspect, I think that we would address a lot of the concerns, not only specific to this site, but to others. Architecture is one thing, it's a personal style, and it's going to continue to evolve. And one of the things I love about our streets, whether it be 2nd, whether it be Minnesota, whether it be others, is that they're not uniform. And we've got a flavor from multiple eras, and that's what makes them special. But it is this cubic massing, and I'm very, very empathetic to. It's interesting that the house on the east side, the beautiful red brick, probably from a volume standpoint is actually larger. But it's the way that this has been built that has compromised the, as the deputant suggested, just their, the whole character of the home that they purchased many years ago. And I don't know what my question is. I'm frustrated. What I'm conveying is frustration, because it seems like there's got to be a simple solution and we can't get to it. That's my frustration.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah.
Aye.
Ms. Hodgson.
And thank you through you. I don't think any of us are unsympathetic to what's happened here, and I think just tugging on some of the issues raised by Councillor Hamlin, I don't know that it's a site plan, but it seems to me if you're moving forward for a variance application, you should be required to provide more detailed drawings that might indicate every building on hand, because it seems to me that the change from the hand sketched survey or drawing that was provided versus the second drawing is quite a bit different. And so it seems to me that maybe we need to look at a way to make sure that all drawings from the outset are consistent and more detailed. And I don't know if that invites a site plan, but just more, I think there's work to be done here to rectify this situation. And we're looking forward to getting staff input on how that might be done.
Thank you. Deputy
Jump
Mayor.
in, just to be crystal clear and fair to staff in my comments. I'm echoing frustration from around the table, but in fairness to staff, the builders who are taking advantage, they're playing within the rule book. We got to change the rule book. So my comments are directed at staff.
Yes. Agree with you, Deputy Mayor. Okay. If there is no other business, can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Jeffrey can always be relied on. All in favor? Thank you and good evening.